change clothes.
We're worried about a quorum.
Also took a shot.
Hey,
Pay no mind to the stuff taped to the desk. That's
Y'all
for
are-
the ARB.
Y'all are live on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, I remembered there being a meeting announced a couple weeks ago, but.
you did not get the stuff?
No.
Okay, I put my
Mike-
card on there too. If you don't mind adding my email address as a
Do you want
contact,
this
maybe
on
that'll
again for
help.
anybody on Zoom?
Oh, you mean it could have gone to spam?
Well, I don't know.
Maybe.
Okay, and I'm gonna turn this on just so you can see it.
Security stuff is
You
good.
need to take
but
the lid
it'll
off.
Trip you up sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's, obviously if somebody zooms in, then we'll note that at the time. I think that's item 3, citizens to be heard. So if somebody's coming in at that point.
I'll put this here just so you can see that, what's going on with that.
Should we call Brink and Travis?
I can do that. Anna's not gonna make it until 3:30, is what she just said, so.
What day?
3:30 or
Beth, would it
2:30?
be in?
3:30.
Monday. I sent out the email with all the attachments for the agenda and the supporting documents.
Newsmax this, Arm Up this, Newsmax, Wirecap. I went looking for a rifle for my.
Hey, Travis?
Mm-mm.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'm back to 531 and I don't,
Yeah.
So-
And it's not kicking anything back. so
Travis,
I'm
no,
just
but-
not getting it.
Michael had my old work email address for a long time, so you may have that as well. But I got the one for the meeting last week.
Yeah, so I'm using the same one.
Break was-
Gremlins, it's always just blame it on Gremlins.
There you go. I said maybe I should start sending them like individually, maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. I
Thank
got
you,
something
sir.
from Carrie Swart out, which is really interesting.
Okay, we got 2 members walking in the front door. We should be in good shape.
Yay.
Okay, that's good.
Like I said, maybe hopefully if you add me as a contact, it won't.
Well, you got what when I sent it back to you, like, did you
Yeah,
get
and
it?
then right after that, I sent another one. So I don't know if you got any today.
I didn't check today.
Hey.
I'm sorry for being a little late. The install new traffic controls getting out of key later now.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's
you
right.
gotta set your alarm for about 20 minutes earlier.
Isn't that gonna be fun on the 4th of July?
Yeah, because it was just in the 4th of July normally, it should back up forever.
Anybody else coming?
No, it's just,
Okay,
No,
you
we were
sent out
just about to
something
send
this
out the
morning,
bailiff, but I'm glad you guys got here.
Does it have the attachment to it?
No, because then I sent out another one in mass to everybody.
Okay, I got the one down, I
That
didn't get the mass.
I don't know what's going on with email.
Well,
I didn't get anything.
Yeah,
I didn't-
Monday
yeah.
I sent out the agenda, the supporting documents.
No, yeah, Monty gave me.
I sent out something today, again,
No.
asking for y'all to confirm if you're gonna come today, because I was like, I don't know what's going on with emails. So my card is right there, if you don't
But
mind adding me,
that's strange because I've gotten every email.
and you've gotten everyone.
Yeah, well, I got it at 7:57 this
Well,
morning.
the IDs have no problem.
Okay,
Yeah. No.
maybe after the meeting, you can check the email address. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah,
Because you just pull up the one that it is and you just click it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That bears checking, and also on y'all's end, sometimes if it's an unrecognized address, it'll go to spam and all that.
yeah.
And that drives me crazy. Okay, it is 2:04 on the wall clock. I note the presence of a quorum. Let's bring the meeting to order. Item 2, consideration and actions on the minutes of the June 3rd, 2021 appraisal district meeting. I'll take a motion at any time.
I'm not in a position. I'm not in a position to make a motion because I wasn't here to verify that they were legit.
That's where I was last time. It reads like what I remember. So I'll make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Minutes, any further discussion of the minutes? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Sign.
Does anybody want the tablets?
Uh,
I don't think so.
Okay.
Today.
I'm gonna entrust those to you, Michael.
Okay.
Okay, item 3, citizens to be heard.
Just
See none
look
in the
one more.
room. Do we have any remotely?
No, there's none on the Zoom
Okay.
that I can see.
Seeing none or hearing none, we'll move on to item 4, consideration and possible action on 2022 budget. Correction to 2022 proposed pay schedule and budget.
Okay, so last meeting, I presented a budget to you. Since that time, I found a $10 error. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. You'll find a set of documents that have, you have this document that has this circled right here, and it says $10 error presentation. And then you'll find another document that has a letter A associated with it right here. You'll have 2 documents, and they both say A. Okay? This is just pointing out that it should have been 495, 195, and I wrote, what we had on that budget at that time was 495, 185. And I've since corrected that, and this is the corrected budget that has the 495, 195, $10 error. And that's it. The other document that shows a difference is also the pay schedule one, and there's 2 things. It looks like this. Brad? Yep, the other one. Yes, yeah, it does not have a letter A. And you'll notice that those are only affecting the 21. There's nothing affecting 22. I just wanted to show you there was a difference there.
Yeah, that's not a big deal, but do you do this with spreadsheets that do the calculations?
I do, except that when they're overridden, like it's straight 35,000. That's why,
Got it.
that's why there was an error. That's it. All of the other items associated with the proposed budget, if you want to take a look at what was proposed or what we talked about last meeting, which was 7 days ago, we were at 1.097068, and now we're at 1.097078 for that bottom line number. So there's just a $10 difference, and that's all.
So I recall last time we discussed this line by line in some detail. Nobody raised any objections. None of us picked up on the $10 difference. We did not consider a motion at that point. We just said, go ahead with this, Mike, and get it ready to submit to the entities. So at this point in time, I would consider a motion to authorize Mike to send this to the entities.
That's correct.
Their
There's,
review and approval.
yeah, and this is to just to let you know the order, and I don't know that I've made this real clear in the past, but I'm going to try my best to make it clear now. There is a comptroller's requirement by June 14th of every year for me to present the budget to the board and to the presiding officers of each taxing unit by June 14th. Sometime during the middle of the summer, we will have a public meeting associated with the same budget, for which I give 10 days notice to both the entities and in the paper. And then the public can come in and say, well, what about this or what about that? That's a public meeting. There's a 10-day notice for that. So, and that's just a proposed thing. That budget is then adopted in late August, I believe, after the taxing units have had more than 60 days. Is that right? 60 days to look at it. And
We basically wind up getting 3 licks at this calf.
so that's where we're at on the budget.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the proposed budget, correct?
For 2022, that's correct.
I'll make a motion.
For submission to the entities.
It is not to approve it. It is to submit. it
Approve
to
the submission.
Yeah,
Approve the
submission.
Submission.
Yes.
Approval, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Somebody faithfully recorded that motion. Is there a second?
Well, I did.
Okay.
all that.
Okay. Motion made and second to approve the submission of this budget to the entities. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Done. All right, Chief Appraiser's report. Item
When
6.
you've got more to report since the last week.
It's been 7 days.
Not much.
Yeah, this,
It's gonna be a short meeting, Rick.
I don't have
I'm
anything,
counting on that.
yeah,
Thank you.
I don't have anything for the supplemental role presentation. We went through that last
Can't
week.
do anything about it.
I don't have anything to add to the financials. We went over the number of months and where we were in the year. I do have something to add for the budget remodel update,
Building remodel.
building, I said budget remodel, building remodel update. We have, Brink had made a contact with Mr. Clint Medill, and he was able to come out yesterday. We walked the property inside and out, talked about like, obviously the deficiencies in the building the way that they are right now, both from the drywall, insulation, ceiling, tiles that are deficient and need to be replaced, those apparent deficiencies. We also talked about modifying the space to best get us out of the temporary cubicle situation and get us a full space that's in for.
That you thought you might do in here.
Yes, and so this space that we're in right now is the conference room, but we're talking about moving that towards the front. This space we can utilize. We can actually have 6 full spaces in here, 6 full offices, small offices for our appraisers with a workspace right here, leaving the kitchen area the way it is, leaving the bathroom areas, upgrading the bathroom areas to ADA compliance with whatever we need to do there. We have 1, 2, 3 hard space offices in the front right now that we would then move where currently we have Beth, Josie, and Val that we would move to those locations. So we would move the appraisal staff back here, and Beth is actually an appraiser. She's studying to be an appraiser. So that's 5 here with 1 office space for future use. I'm trying to build it for the 20-year period in the future. And then that leaves 3 spaces up front. 2 of those are occupied. 2 of those would be occupied at that point. So that leaves a flex space for my 2 front office customer service people, 10 employees, and that leaves a flex space, an additional office for a flex space there. And then I would have a conference room in the front. I would have to move somewhere in the front with my office space, my office space up there. And so we were able to just walk the property and talk about some things. The very first thing that he said is just to get a set of as-built and some elevations, both, the floor plan and the elevations. This is the attached email that he sent to me this morning in association with our conversation yesterday. That's just for the as-built in the thing.
Okay, but that is not that included whatever he said in his email, right? Or it's gonna be more? His email says, well, I think you ought to do this, which that's what he thinks we ought to do. We probably haven't considered it.
Well, yeah, this is the elevation. I think it would be a good idea to capture the elevation. So this is the elevation. That's the way I understand it. This is the elevation.
This incorporates his recommendations here.
That is correct. To the best of my knowledge, it does. And so this is just to get started, to get going, to see what we have, and then the board can decide, how best to move forward. I know that Brink is offered to be the point man for the board.
I did.
I think that's what was decided. Is that not?
Thank you, Brink.
We all remember that
Yeah.
precisely.
Okay, good.
No,
Well, you know,
I think I remember volunteering you.
No. Yeah, so
Well,
let
I've been
me make a few comments if I can. So
Yeah.
The finding somebody who would do commercial work was difficult. There's nobody in Rockport.
Not surprising.
But this person exists. And I talked to some people I know in the business. And one of the observations that was made about Mr. Medill was that he can kind of tend to be hard to get along with. So that's from a guy who I trust and like and so forth. But the other thing that happened in my transactions with him on the phone, and you know about this, was I said, we'd like to sit down and chat with you about whether this would work and so forth and so on. And he said, well, I'll be good to do that. He said, I charge a $175 fee for that initial proposal. And I said, well, thank you very much. I think we can look someplace else. And I mean, that's ridiculous. And he backed up real fast on the phone. So, well, if it's, blah, 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 so forth. He said, no, I'll just waive that fee. So that's kind of where we are. And I don't know, let me just turn this off. I don't know where. I'm not saying we shouldn't use him, but my vibes are not the best.
That's interesting.
Just the banker in me says, you give somebody money up front, you might as well kiss it goodbye. And I told customers for years, use me as the bad guy. Don't give them money up front. When you call out an air conditioner guy, he installs an air conditioner, you don't give him a deposit to show up.
Right.
He wants $1,000 to get us on the schedule. I don't know him.
I would say, no, we're not going to give you a deposit. That's very unusual. I've never heard of that myself. Not that I've done a lot of these kind of things. Just tell him no. We would be interested in his proposal and we'll pay him for the hours worked, which is what the typical thing is.
Okay.
If you want me to call him and tell him that, I'll be happy to.
Okay, good. Yeah, like I said, I was in hearings this morning, and when I came back from hearings, this email was waiting for me, and then here we are at 2. So this is the email that I received subsequent to our walkthrough of the building yesterday. That's all. That's where it's at.
I personally have no experience to guide me on whether this is a decent amount of money for that scope of work or not.
It feels to me to be a little on the high side based on what we're doing here. I paid about this much to Steve Haynes to design our home from scratch. So, but again, this is a commercial business. I've never done that before.
Well, and one of the things that we don't want to back ourselves into a bad deal just because of timing, but we're damn near 4 years out on that storm.
Right.
And there's some real merit in getting this lined out so that the work can primarily fall between the certification of the rolls and
September and
August
December.
and the first of the year.
So one of the things I'm not clear about is he calls himself Medill Builders. Would he want to be the GC? Or is he expecting to do that? I better check with him on the phone because we can't just go with,
Right.
we need to get competitive bids.
When I last spoke with him yesterday, we walked the property. I talked about it. He goes, well, where we need to start is having a set of as-built, what you have on the property so that you can start to fill in the spaces and you get to tell me where you want offices and I can tell you whether it's doable or not doable. That all sounded right. I mean, all of that sounded right. And I said, okay, so basically what would you, send me something in an email about what that would cost.
Yeah.
When we walked the property, we talked about the externals of the building, not only the internals, but, just like having some things, we don't have many windows, but just having some covering for some windows, maybe, so then he led to this email and said, hey, it'd probably be a good idea for you to get elevations just so you know how tall the building is and what the scope of work for a window might look like or anything like that. This is what I've got thus far. This is the first step. It'd be really good for you to have.
Drawings of this building.
Not that I can find. I'm still
probably
looking.
can't find them anyplace.
Yeah.
So let me
You
make.
mentioned Steve.
Huh?
You mentioned Steve Haynes?
Yeah.
Is he not in? But did you ask him?
Yeah.
Anyways,
I talked to him, I talked to Smith, Quinn, and who I thought would be interested in doing it. He's got a good reputation. I think that was in this Clinton Dell. People were saying, in fact, that's where I got, he's a little difficult to get along with. So here's a thought, okay, is I'm a little surprised about, I mean, the price may be about right. I
For
don't know.
commercial, maybe the very.
Getting $1,000 deposit to put him on the schedule, forget it. I have no interest in doing that. We're happy to pay his bill based on his hours work, which is the kind of billing I'm used to seeing. And if you all are comfortable with that, I'll call him, and I mean, I'll be nice about it. So for the way I have no interest in putting down a deposit, that's not the way we're used to doing business, and, so forth and so on.
We're not gonna do it that way.
Right, and I will begin to explore opportunities and.
I have no problem with that.
Sounds like
It's a good way to test, how easy or uneasy it is to get along with this
Yeah.
stuff.
So if he says, well, no, that's the way I do business, I'll say, fine, thank you, I'm glad we know that now, and we'll pass.
We'll go down the street.
Because it's been 4 years, your point, and if it takes us another 6 months, because we got to get somebody from Corpus or something like that.
I will say that I had a good interaction with him when he was on
Good.
site, so.
Good.
So, for what it's worth.
No, that's valuable.
It is very valuable. How he behaves in the work environment tells a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so you'll get back to him and tell him.
I will do that this
Not
week.
giving him the upfront if he wants to, wants business.
Right.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
and I was real, at least I thought I was real clear that, we're a government entity where we have to go through a bidding process, but the very first thing is to, like, what do you have? How big is this building? What are some things? He did happen to know, he knew that, hey, you're gonna have to go through this, this ADA compliance. I know a person at Corpus that provides, really, a really good professional.
that.
Yeah, he said that. And so he knew of a gentleman that was, or an inspector that comes around and measures your door jambs and your counter heights and things like that. So he knew about both that, and he talked about existing versus new builds and how they're different ADA standards, so he had to know about that. Again, I had a pretty good interaction with him, so it should be good for me to just go back and just say how it's gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, in a pleasant, professional way.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a little bit different than I'm used to doing
Yeah.
business. And I mean, maybe that's the way it is, but that's not what I'm used to. Not that I do a lot.
Right. Right.
Okay, good. I will do that and let everybody know how that goes.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
nice if we could work with him because he's locally and so forth. So.
Do we know anything about the legal entity? Is he an assumed name? Is he
I don't.
incorporated?
Again, I met the guy for the first time yesterday.
He's been here for like 20 years.
Yeah, he's been in the area for a long time. Actually, more than that. He's been here for more than 20 years. Yeah, for closer to 30, I think.
And Steve was okay with him. Steve Haynes. was okay.
That says something to me.
Yeah, no, if he's that involved. Okay,
Yeah,
like
any,
I say, we don't want to rush into something just because we think we're in a hurry, but it would be nice to make it work so it can happen in that,
yeah, and I was telling Dee that also the last time we had any kind of work, legal work associated with the bidding process, which I was guided through, we had a firm, and I talked to my attorney, Jim, and I said, that was a little on the pricey side. Well, obviously I want to do everything correctly, but I don't want to, expend a whole bunch of legal costs just to do the bidding process correctly. So,
Right.
so he's going to help me with that process whenever we get to that point. We're just now in the exploratory phase as far as I'm concerned. Beyond the building remodel update, the only other thing I have is I wanted to let y'all know we have about 2,100 total appeals. We've done a whole bunch of those already. We've handled several informally already, but that's more than we've ever had before. And so I think one of the questions we had last week was, the budget for the ARB and the number of days that we expected, and that seems to be playing out. So we have more than we've ever had before. Not surprising. So
you've dealt with a substantial portion of these already. Can you make any judgment or commentary about what's driving the appeals?
just the market value change, yeah. We obviously raised a lot of value in a lot of different areas. some that have not been touched in a long time. That, and what I mean by that is that there was no data in those areas before, and now there's data in those areas. And
That was a question I had, was what, I've heard from multiple people that it just all of a sudden, like it caught up to the market overnight. And the question was, were we not doing our job yesterday, or are we not doing it today? And I thought that's
a fair question.
a fair question. You know what I mean? Like nothing. And then all of a sudden it's like we caught up 10 years of values in 1 year.
Well, we lost it all this past year.
Well,
We're in a whole different.
I didn't comment. I can't comment on that. We don't get into it, but I do bring up, I mean, I think that's a fair sentiment that's in the community.
That's absolutely fair. That's an absolutely fair and honest question from a property owner. Say, so was that right last year,
Yeah.
or are you wrong this year? And so what I would just say to that is there's two things. There's accurate appraisal, and it's what I can prove. And what I can prove is different than, I think that's as high as this, but I don't have a cell in that entire neighborhood, and I haven't had one in 4 or 5 years. So what I can prove, when I get one data point that matches all the rest of the stuff that I thought was congruent, now I can prove it. Now I just go to it. And people may not like it, and I understand.
It's not that you're not looking at it on a regular basis, but you may
I
not
look
be
at
able,
everything.
that's my point. You can't make a move until it's appropriate to do so.
I can't make it, not only that, but it has to be defensible. Like, I think about.
No, that makes sense to me.
Okay.
That's, you answered it perfectly. I just, I think a fair question, as you said, from the public.
I think it is.
And I make that comment because that probably is part of what drives the appeals is, I mean, the overall market adjustments. And then I know some where we took the feeling of we took 10 years of values in one. So there you go.
Well,
I'm not a property value expert, but I've been, I think you're 6 years almost, something like that. And I've been impressed every year with the diligence and the thoughtfulness and the reasoning behind what the approach has been to do appraisals.
Well, one of the points that can be made is, as I recall, the tax code says you have to appraise every property every 3 years, once every 3 years. We do it every year, which helps prevent that sharp jump. And my impression, and this is, I know nothing about the real estate markets, thank God, but that this market is just taken off both nationwide and here in the last year. And some of that's being reflected at this point in those things. And I don't know, whether that's the case you want to try to make somebody or not.
At the end of the day, it's, and I'm going to say this with all soberness that I can. It's not your job to defend my methodology. It's really not. Your job is to see that the operations for the district they're going the right way. Like, am I doing things the right way? Am I holding meetings the right way? Have you done a diligent search of how I've done in both my map review and my property value study? Like, I'm not getting dinged on my property value study because I'm too high. I almost got dinged because I was too low, last time. And I fought it tooth and nail. I'm riding this fine line of being right where I should be. And then you throw into the mix that I have to treat this one in some equitable fashion, and people get to tear it apart. They get to say, well, the square footages are different, or the whatever. That's my job. I get to defend that. That's what I signed on for. I understand.
Yeah, I didn't sign up for that.
Yeah, you didn't sign up for that, and nobody here did. So you don't have to defend my choice and methodology. That's why you have a map review at the comptroller level. That's why you have a property value study at a comptroller level. They're doing that test on me and every other district in the state, and rightfully so. And I understand the sentiment by the sample property owner. They go, well, were they wrong here or were they wrong here? Because they're obviously different. Well, there's a couple of different factors. One, the market's moving at an incredibly fast rate. And two, I can only move it when I can prove it. So,
And I think that's exactly the way.
No, makes good sense. The problem driving is DS. Do we have a sense of what's driving increase in appeals?
yeah,
All of the above.
yes.
All of the above.
Okay. You talk about the market being crazy. Somebody, a kid like last week put their house on the market, and at a very high price relative to history, I mean, I don't do any analysis on it. But they got 6 offers above asking price the day it went on the market.
Yeah, I've heard those
That's
same
the
stories
incentive.
that,
But that's not unusual. That's what's happening.
yeah, it's a pretty frothy market and
Interesting market.
a step jump from last year.
Interesting market.
And like Mike says, he's got to be able to prove it. He's got to have some sales. But I suspect that a lot of sales are happening. I'd be interested.
Big time.
I'd be interested to know what the turnover is this year versus last year.
I'll ask.
Yeah, our, one of the budget line items that went up this last year, or that I presented for this year to go up, was was like our basic printing and office supplies with like the associated, and then the clerk's office. We're getting more deeds than we ever, I mean, Beth sees those come through, and
Yeah.
we're getting tons of deeds, tons of transactions that are coming through. The reality, if you back away from the emotion, which is hard to do for the average citizen, and I mean this with all sincerity, I understand it. I own a lot of property. I don't own a lot of different properties. I have a lot of value, and I pay a lot of tax in this county. I do. I personally do. So I understand emotion. But if you back away and you just ask yourself the question, has the market done anything in the last couple of years? And if the answer is yes, has it gone up or down? Well, if anybody's honest with themselves, it's gone up. And then you say, okay, does this look right for my property? If they were to be in their closet and asking themselves that question with nobody else listening, they're just talking to themselves. That's the question. I mean, really, that's the question. If they don't think it's right, then they get to say, Mike, I don't think you're right. I don't think your staff is right. I don't think your method is right. They get their, that's part of the process. That's all it is.
Very good.
Okay, one last question. You're gonna go back to Mr., what's his name? Medill, and tell him what we're not gonna do. And if he goes along with that, then you all are prepared to go forward with this design, right?
I am comfortable with a moderate price for just drawing what we have and maybe giving us an understanding of what the scope of work would entail.
Well, that's, I look at the, and, this sounds a little high to me, but I have no experience in the market. But the thing that I would want is, let's see a little detail behind this. It's one line for $5,200. Help me understand, how many hours against what different times?
Yeah.
Just to get a sense of it.
Sure.
And that may piss him off, and if it does, then.
Or it may just be like,
Then we may have avoided a bigger headache.
Avoided a bigger headache.
or it
Exactly right.
may just be like, okay, yeah, and we can, you understand what you're gonna get. What piece of paper are we gonna get?
Yeah, I want to see the results. So give me a list of what you're going to deliver
Mm-hmm.
there, and here's what it's going to cost, and, we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, I think you've got a good plan. Yes, the situation is if you all get comfortable with this guy going forward, then turn him loose. If you're not comfortable, even though we'd like to get all this done sooner rather than later,
Well,
then we ought not to be doing it.
what I would caution is that we can authorize the work for the sketch and, maybe some elevations. But then beyond that,
Oh, yeah, no,
it's
you've got to
the
go
bidding
through.
process.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Does
good.
he know that?
I said that, but
Okay.
you should say it again and you should make it very clear.
Well, all we're even talking about today is this right here.
As built and elevations.
So,
And what if, like you said, there's not a lot of detail there, but presumably what that would give us after you and Mike have talked about what, his needs are and how it ought to be laid out and everything. Then Mike has talked to him over here, and if he does what I think he would do, he's gonna come back with both elevations and floor plans that reflect those desires, which gives us a starting point.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
And that has some value,
Absolutely it does.
even if,
The guy's been here for 20 years. You got an
You got an option to put out RFP. I mean, so.
And he understands the bidding process and fine. Makes sense, Jack?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you for jumping in and helping. us.
Absolutely,
Thank you,
Frank. I know you didn't know you were doing it. We appreciate it.
Well, I knew I was gonna work with him a little bit to get things started. But that, that was a while back, so.
Must have been a meeting you missed.
This is what's
That was
known
the meeting
as,
I missed. That was 2 meetings ago, I missed.
Yeah,
this is what's known as the slippery slope, right?
That's okay. I can manage that.
moving forward, the next meeting that we'll have will be the public meeting associated. That will be like a 10, at least a 10-day, probably closer to 15-day notice for both the entities and the public. I'll post something in the paper, and that will be reflective of this thing that I would have already submitted to the entities.
So we've made a motion and approved to pass on to the engineers.
That's correct. And I'm required to present it to you. So
Yeah.
we've met that obligation.
We've checked those blocks. Okay. And then the meeting after the entity, assuming the entities come back and take no exception to it, then we would have another meeting before what date certain?
So the public meeting notice meeting, which is going to be in, let's just say hypothetically it was a month from now. That meeting has a 10-day notice requirement, and it's a public notice for a public hearing is what it is. That goes through, we would have notified and heard the public, at which point we would have satisfied another requirement. 60 days after this today, or tomorrow when I send the letter out, 60 days after that, they will adopt, if they have no action, then this board can adopt the proposed budget. That's what it is. So the public hearing is for the proposed budget. That's what it is. This today is that I've told you about it and I'm going to give the entities notice about it. So.
And they must object to it, otherwise it's approvable on the basis of no action.
That is correct. If there's no action, then it's assumed that it's approved. So that's going to happen in August. That would be, so knowing that we're at least having 2 more meetings, the public hearing and then the approval of the 2022 budget, at which time we'll have building remodeling update, conversations hopefully, and have a plan for the fall. And right now, recently, one other thing, as you know, I'm required to submit the certified roll to the taxing units by July 20th of every year. And there's a 5% roll in there, which means that I would have had to hand over at least 95% of the roll by July 20th. That's what I'm supposed to certify. And I did a check this Monday. We're at 14%, and that number needs to be a little less than 5. It's like 14.7.
Well, that means you're only 14%.
I did too.
No.
Well, we've got what, 86% to go. So
I kept that to myself.
No,
you're within 14%, so you
yeah,
got.
it's not even a value thing. It's just the amount of the roll. Like if you were to take the whole roll, like right here, it says that I'm handing over at least 95% of that roll. So there's only 5% that's out there still yet to be determined by A or B. That's all it means. And it's
And you're 14-something% out
14
now.
something right
Okay.
now. And I've got 6 weeks or 5 weeks. 5,
Yeah,
6 weeks.
5, 6 weeks.
Yeah. And we're clicking along at 4 days a week. 32 hearing today.
5 weeks.
32 hearing today. So
Golly,
32 hearings a day.
a lot of
that's how many we schedule. I will tell you that our no-show rate is pretty high right now, north of 70%. Right?
What?
It's bad.
The people, like, so if we had 10 people, just say hypothetically, we had 10 people scheduled, 7 would not show.
So what do you have to do about that?
Nothing.
Nothing, so
They're no-show.
you don't have any responsibility of doing anything?
Do they-
Okay.
That's a default on their part, and we're
That's
not
correct.
responsible.
Now there is a remedy for somebody that has like a good cause issue that they could then like write the board. I was on my way and got in a wreck, or
Yeah.
my husband had a heart attack, or
Right.
How long do they have to give you that
That's
notice?
4 days after their hearing.
Okay.
They have to write a letter to the ARB,
Okay.
and then they can have it rescheduled.
That sounds fair.
Well, I mean, that's the way the law is set,
That's
so.
great.
yeah.
Well, I mean, the law and what's fair aren't always.
Is that an unusual no-show rate or is?
Yes, that's higher than normal. I will say that in the cycle, we have a very high show rate at the very beginning of the protest season, and then it drops down to a very low show rate, a very low show rate. So you have a high show rate, a low show rate in the middle, and then you have a high show rate at the end.
Start running out of
But the
time.
valley is much steeper right now than normal. In normal years, like even last year, our show rate was at least 60%. And now it's inverted. It's like
30%.
yeah, it's only like 30%, it's weird.
Good for y'all.
One could speculate that people are beginning to realize that these property values are really going up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's very possible.
And they're putting signs in the yard.
Well, just to give you, for instance, so like this morning, we had 16 possible hearings this morning, and we heard 5?
I think so.
5?
Mhm.
We heard 5 hearings, maybe 6, something like that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we're
I'd be
scheduled
tempted to put a sign in my yard, except my wife knows where my guns are.
16. Yeah, we have 16 per half day, so 16 and 6, there's 32. That's our schedule rate right now. Like when we send out a notice of a day, there's 32 on the schedule. Because we know the no-show rate is something, it's gonna be something. Not everybody shows every day. It's really strange when you get a show rate that's like 80% on a day. You're like, oh my gosh, everybody showed up. And it all happens on one day. So it just happens. I mean, you do your best.
That's amazing.
That's really surprising if people would take the initiative to schedule something and then not show up.
There's an answer there, and I, just from listening to people, the original bark rate.
Yeah.
Prompts, I'm gonna protest.
Right.
And then they let it sink in, they hear their neighbors and other comments about, well, mine went this, and so they begin to, they get over the initial,
Yeah.
I'm upset. Like I'm doing the same thing with my son right now. He lives in Buda, which is Austin South.
Yeah.
His house has gone up in value on the tax rolls 61 or 62% since he bought it 5 years ago. And it's just, and that's just Austin. And the closer you get to downtown Austin with automobile manufacturer moving in, I understand Microsoft is building. There's a plant that is the most massive thing I've seen on the loop, the toll road around Austin with no signage, and I think it's the automobile dealership.
It's
Tesla.
huge.
And
Huge.
there's talk of, I had somebody offer me $200,000 for my house more than I thought it was worth. And it's kind of like, but you can't afford to take it because if you do, then where are you going to go?
Yeah, the underpass is already occupied.
That's right. Not anymore, D. They passed the law. I can't do that anymore.
What did they do with it?
I don't know. I haven't been back. I just know it.
Phil
passed.
Potholes?
I have a response. We're, of course, we're on camera. But
I was gonna say, you better wait till we adjourn.
I couldn't resist that.
Can we adjourn? Are we done?
That's
We're
all we
done,
got.
yeah. We started late, but we finished early.
All right, motion to adjourn. I know we don't need one. I did it anyway.
That's fine. It makes you feel good.
Appreciate it, guys.
I don't do it every meeting. I pick when I'm feeling it.
My answer is a one-way bus ticket to a certain state in the western part of the United States that begins with a C.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll figure out what
There's a
state.
couple
Don't get too
there.
crazy.
Well, there's one in the.
Extremely western.
Okay, if I
But either one's fine.
What's going on, you want me to send it to you and you tell them or what? With Medill. You want me to just email everybody, you want me